Destroyer of the Gods, Early Christian Distinctiveness in the Roman World. This is a text written by New Testament scholar Larry Hurtado to reveal the unique historical contribution of the early Christian faith, both to the Roman world, within which the Christian faith was largely introduced, and to the broader Western world overall. As noted within the title, the main objective of Hurtado's text is to identify Christian distinctiveness by presenting the reader with the unique aspects of the Christian faith that was introduced within an almost entirely polytheistic and pagan context. Hurtado reveals that the early Christian faith, in contrast to our Western concept of religion, was looked upon as quite different from religious expression at the time it was introduced in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd centuries. As otherwise noted by Hurtado within the text, Christianity was certainly not part of the establishment. Indeed, as the following chapters show, Christianity really seems to have been a dangerous development that challenged what were then accepted notions of religion, piety, identity, and behavior. Chapter 1, Content. Having provided a brief review of Hurtado's subject matter, I will now focus on the content, the strengths, and the weaknesses of the first chapter of Hurtado's text. Within Chapter 1 of Destroyer of the Gods, Early Christian Distinctiveness in the Roman World, Larry Hurtado focuses on the responses of both pagans and Jews to the early Christian movement. As stated by Hurtado, one of the best indications that early Christianity was different in the context of the Roman world is the evidence of how outside observers at the time saw Christians and their beliefs and practices. With regard to the Jewish response, Hurtado notes that opposition to the new Christian movement came primarily from devout Jewish individuals who viewed the Christian movement as a threat to the integrity of Judaism. Hurtado also surmises that Jewish opposition to the Christian movement was most likely a zealous and violent opposition, akin to the zealous opposition and violence against believers reflected by Saul prior to becoming the Apostle Paul. As such, it was most likely considered a display of loyalty to God for devout Jews to attack and attempt to disable the Christian movement. When identifying the pagan perspective toward the Christian movement, Hurtado describes yet more visceral hatred from pagan members of the cultural elite. These individuals, even though they ascribed to a multitude of deities, found the Christian faith to be at odds with the pagan social norms and likewise viewed the new Jesus followers as a threat. As noted by Hurtado, these pagan critics were members of the cultural elite of the time, such as philosophers, literary figures, people from the Roman era intelligentsia. It is interesting that these pagan writers typically referred to Christians as dissonant and out of step, and as in tension with the larger culture of the time. Some of the pagan perspectives that Hurtado discusses include those of the Roman writer Tacitus, Nero, Pliny the Younger, the physician Galen, the emperor Marcus Aurelius, and philosophers Lucian and Celsus. Although the hatred that each of these pagan elites expressed towards the Christian movement varied, the overall mood was that of anger and indignation. This indignation was often manifested as slander and accusations, acts of extreme violence, harassment, judicial proceedings, and attempts to discredit the Christian's intellect. Chapter 1, Strengths and Weaknesses. Strengths. A significant strength of the first chapter of Hurtado's text is that Hurtado provides the reader with ample primary sources and documentation to highlight the attitudes of those within Roman society towards the new Christian movement. With this documentation, the reader is able to see firsthand the visceral hatred, antagonism, and slander that Christians often faced as a result of their unique faith in the resurrected Jesus and their fearless devotion to the righteous teachings of their Messiah. The documentation also allows the reader to see the underlying theme of fear that greatly appears to have prompted the hateful responses of the pagans towards the new Christian movement. Their fear of the loss of status and influence, and their fear of the loss of monetary profit. Additionally, the documentation allows the reader to see the truly positive influence that Christians were having upon the society, despite all of the lies and accusations being hurled against them. The reader is able to see this in some of the pagan elite, as some of the pagan elites mentioned by Hurtado admit to such things as the Christians' heightened self-control and moral ethic, their ardent commitment to justice, their humility and virtue, and their advanced intellect, despite being untrained in philosophy and other subjects held in high regard by the pagans. Weaknesses. The main weakness of Hurtado's first chapter is that the reader is only able to see the attitude towards the Christian movement from individuals who are either members of the pagan cultural elite or those who were considered devout Jews. Considering that Jesus interacted with individuals from a variety of backgrounds and ministered to individuals who are both devoutly religious and not so religious, it would seem good to hear from a broader spectrum of individuals concerning their views of the Christian movement during these early times. My guess is that individuals who are not members of the pagan cultural elite or considered to be among the devoutly religious were probably benefiting from the good news of Jesus' redemptive work on their behalf and experiencing deliverance from all sorts of bondage as a result of hearing and being transformed by the truth of the gospel. This is exactly what we see within the Gospels. Certainly, by including the voices of such individuals within the research, a very different portrait of the Christian movement would be portrayed. One that would still allow the reader to see the distinctiveness of the Christian faith, but from a more positive perspective. The value of Hurtado's text. Chapter 1 of Larry Hurtado's text, Destroyer of the Gods, provides the reader with an up-close look at the great opposition that early Christians within the Roman world faced as they lived out their faith in Jesus Christ. Such Christians were not only viewed in disparaging ways, but they underwent great tests of their faith as they experienced slander and false accusations, violence, harassment, and efforts to quell their zeal for Jesus Christ and the good news of the gospel. The good news, however, is that through the profound work of the Holy Spirit, these early Christians were busily turning the idolatrous and sinful environment of the Roman world upside down through their powerful Christian witness, their fervent pursuit of righteousness, and their unwavering advocacy of Jesus Christ, man's only means of salvation and redemption, and man's only avenue to communion with the one true, righteous, and holy God. The profound impact of the Christian movement, as displayed within Hurtado's text, is also a reminder of the encouraging truth that Jesus spoke to the disciples after Jesus was resurrected from the grave. As Jesus said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them all things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age."